So, a while ago, I came across an honest Elsword review, which is probably 2 years old by the time this is edited, but whatever. Now, most of that video is irrelevant to the topic at hand, but something got brought up that stood out to me. The so-called perfect recatch. Before I go much further, I should point out that this video is only meant to be informative, so I'm not going to be saying much about Braincliff or his opinions because I honestly don't care that much. Besides, my playstyle is practically based on this mechanic, so I was bound to touch on it eventually for one reason or another. With that out of the way, what exactly is a perfect recatch? Well, technically it's nothing. And when I say that, I don't mean it's not called a perfect recatch or anything like that. Braincliff already addressed that possibility himself. Okay, let me put it this way. How is a perfect recatch defined, at least in this context? Well, first I should define some other terms. Tech chasing is already brought up in the video, but it can sort of be considered the Smash equivalent to set play. Again, sort of. A set play, also called a vortex in some games, is a series of combos that works to stop your opponent from doing anything through reads, mix-up, okis, and so on. An oki, or okizeme, is something the player does in order to confirm on wakeup. It basically boils down to this, more or less. When an opponent is knocked down, they have a set of options on wakeup. So do you. When you choose an option that beats whatever option your opponent chose, it's okizeme. It's kind of like rock, paper, scissors, actually. If you continue to okizeme the opponent, you're performing a set play. If you're doing this in Smash, then congratulations, you're tech chasing. As for perfect recatch, it would be fair to say that it's just an okizeme. So cool, simple terminology mix-up, case closed. Except that's not actually the case. See, a perfect recatch is like an oki in the sense that you can confirm off of your opponent's wakeup with it, but there's a reason that it's called perfect. Apparently, a perfect recatch is an oki that's so good that it will confirm on wakeup no matter what the opponent does. The reason for this? Iframes degrade even during delay. Except they don't. Let's look at the example provided. Basically what happens is that our Centurion rolls away from his opponent awakens, and he gets caught soon after. So let's break this down. The way Elsword's wake-up mechanics work can effectively be explained like this. When you roll to either direction, your character is considered to be in a knocked down state. You're invincible, but you don't technically have iframes, if that makes sense. Once the roll finishes, you start to get iframes for a short period of time, during which you can perform whatever actions you want. Wake-up attacks are a lot different in this regard, but I'll skip over that since we aren't talking about that right now. If we apply this to the clip we're shown, this perfect recatch actually isn't all that perfect at all. When the opponent awakens, our Centurion hasn't actually finished his rolling animation, and we can see this during the first couple of frames after the awakening delay finishes. This means that while the opponent's delay is active, the Centurion is still considered to be knocked down rather than invincible. Then, after he decides to run away from his opponent, his iframes begin to flicker. Furthermore, the time between the start of the character's iframes and the first damage number we can see on screen is about half a second. This is roughly the same amount of time the player has in iframes under normal circumstances, too. The problem with this series of events isn't that Awakening can be used as a perfect oki or anything like that, it just means that some bad decisions were made. Had he jumped over his opponent or used a skill like Backblast on Wake Up, he probably, if not definitely, could have avoided being caught, provided that this opponent didn't react quickly enough. But one bad example does not an argument make. Having said that, despite there having been others to use the term perfect recatch, or something similar, no one seems to have posted video evidence under this label, at least not as far as I can find. This leaves the question of whether or not a perfect recatch, as defined here, is even possible. Not really. See, whenever someone, myself or otherwise, attempts to okizeme their opponent, there's a kind of wait period before any attempt at one is actually made. This is primarily because of the iframe problem mentioned earlier, but also due to other variables, such as the duration of a character's wake-up animation. In any case, there are a few ways that this wait period affects the feasibility of an okizeme. The first condition, as it were, is if an oki is attempted while the opponent is knocked down or has iframes. If the opponent is still invincible when this occurs, then the attempted oki will probably fail. But the likelihood of this being the case is generally dependent on the type of oki that was attempted. For example, most homing skills won't register an invincible object as a homing target, and will therefore whiff entirely under these circumstances. Skills that linger or have multiple hits, however, may be able to confirm in spite of this, depending on how the opponent proceeds. This potential response is of course the second condition. In some cases, an opponent may still have the MP to use for a skill of their own, which causes a sort of delay clash. This prevents delay-based okizemes from confirming. In addition, some skills work in such a way that they outright deny certain wake-up confirms entirely, in part due to their own functionality, and not the least of which being Bullet Blitz. The skill in question doesn't have to be a special active either. In fact, actives make up some of the best options for combating okis. Alternatively, the opponent may not have MP, but they might have a different resource instead. Or they might just have an awakening bead. Because of these variables, attempting an okizeme isn't always as simple as it seems, at least when playing as or against certain characters who have access to the tools necessary for them. And that's not to say that there are no overpowered okizemes out there either. That is, one that covers more of these conditions than the average option should. In fact, these overpowered skills are probably the ones that you recognize as okizemes to begin with. But back to the topic at hand. If a perfect recatch is currently unfeasible, what would it take to, hypothetically, make one? A true perfect recatch would require a skill that can succeed when both conditions are both true or false, as well as any combination of the two. In other words, it would have to be able to confirm on wake up irregardless of the player or the opponent's actions, or the lack thereof. And, needless to say, a skill of that caliber borders on the line of impossibility. Nonetheless, to the player on the receiving end of this, it certainly feels impossible to deal with something so seemingly perfect.
I get it.
I don't get it.